I saw that if you have to decide on which location, which infrastructure is needed, how to deal with the residents, how to deal with the slums, people who have to go and live there. What is important at that moment is that you have a look at who is involved and what are their objectives. And so, to continue with the example of Amersfoort and Damesna, you have of course the cities like Marrakesh and Rabat that are nearby and try to solve their problems partly by those new cities. You have the region that is involved, the national level. You have the farmers that were living there, the residents that will come eventually there. You have the building sector. You also have people in the slums, what to do with them. And so what I'm proposing in this presentation is a methodology to incorporate, integrate the objectives of all these stakeholders within the decision process. And this methodology is called the multi-actor, multi-criteria analysis. And it starts with first looking at what are possible solutions for the challenges, what are possible alternatives, possible locations, possible technologies, possible policy measures, what are those alternatives, and then directly go and look who is involved, what are the stakeholders. And then look at what are their criteria, what do they find important, and how important do they find that, what is the weight they attach to those criteria. And so that's a first important phase, looking at what is possible and what is important if you want to evaluate that. And so already by incorporating the different stakeholders, you might get new ideas for other alternatives. You might get also, once you know all these objectives, you might already adapt a bit the solutions that are possible. And then in the next phase, it's important to have indicators, and there where the operational research models are coming in as measurement methods or simulation models. It's important when we are modeling that we also incorporate again what those stakeholders find important. And so that's also an important step in having those models, because what do we want in the end is to see those different alternatives, you can call them scenarios once they are more specified. We need to see, well, how good are they scoring on the objectives of all the actors that are involved. And so here you get a traditional multi-criteria analysis, but with the main importance, you get of course a ranking for each stakeholder, and you get also a multi-actor view. But more important is that you, in the end of the day, know what are the advantages and disadvantages of each policy measure for each involved stakeholder. And that gives you the information you need for defining implementation paths, deployment strategies, and possibly also adapting the measures that you want to implement. Now, just to give you an idea of what kind of outcome this methodology is proposing, here you have an example of 3 stakeholders, and you see how they are scoring the different possible scenarios here. And so you directly have a view of who is in favor of what. More important is that, for example, for the City Council of Antwerp here in this example, you directly know what are the advantages and disadvantages. That's crucial information for afterwards in the implementation. And as a case, I took the example of sustainable city logistics. Some of you know that I was very interested in the city logistics of the souks nowadays. I still need some extra time to completely understand how it's been done here. But anyway, what we experience a lot in city logistics is, well, it's very important. No economic activity is possible without. But you have quite some nuisances. And so rush and land use in town, insecurity, congestion, emissions. And so if you want to go to a more sustainable way of doing that, there are different possibilities. They exist. But But what we see in practice is that a lot are failing in practice. And the reason why is that they don't look at all the actors involved. So in a city logistics environment, who is there? You have the shipper sending his freight to the receiver by use of a logistics service provider, but you also have the authorities creating the regulation and the setting in which this is possible. And you also have the citizens living in that city. And so if you look at, for example, urban consolidation centers, where authorities are saying, well, you should use that urban consolidation center, a lot of those experiments failed. So there is a long list of where they tried it, but where it just didn't work. The reason why is because they didn't take into account the objectives of the logistics service providers. Second example why it fails, for example, night distribution. Nice example of how to solve, or not to solve, but of course create less congestion. But if you don't have objectives of the citizens having a quiet environment to sleep, well, it will just fail and you will have complaints and it will not work. So the idea is that if you evaluate city logistics concepts, you look at those different actors involved, you also see how they act together. For example, here you have the authorities and citizens, you have the receivers, shippers, and the logistics service provider. They are acting together on the traffic market, transport market, and they have to share the public space. They also have different objectives. For example, the shippers, they are interested in successful pickups, whereas the citizens, well, they would like to have a road-safe environment. The authorities are looking for low-cost measures. All these objectives you have to take into account when evaluating new proposals. And so that's what the evaluation framework we are proposing in an FP7 European project Strategiques. We bring that all together in the evaluation, together with more traditional evaluation methods, social cost-benefit analysis and business models. But complementary to that, we have that MAMCA to see will the other actors support the measures. So that's a way of incorporating those objectives within the evaluation process. And so it will take a bit of time, of course, because you need to have participation, you need to know what are the objectives, but in the end, for your implementation, it will create much more support and it will facilitate the way solutions are being implemented. Now, we have been applying this MAMCA methodology already to several applications, ranging from a lot of examples within the transport and mobility sector, but also in other sectors. As long as you see that there are conflicts and different stakeholders involved, it just works. And so that is my message. Dialogue is necessary. How do you do that? Well, the MAMCA methodology enables to do that in a structured way and to really bring in those objectives explicitly, not as a hidden agenda, but explicitly in your decision process. So thank you for your attention.